The deep space beyond Saturn's rings was quiet and dark. Captain Marcus Hayes stood in the command center of his patrol vessel, watching the screens display the vast emptiness of the outer solar system. He had been commanding this ship for 5 years, and every day was the same. Humans had spread across the solar system, building colonies on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, and on the asteroid fields that floated between the planets. Trade ships moved between these settlements like blood cells moving through a body, carrying supplies, people, and hope for a better future among the stars. Marcus was a tall man with dark hair beginning to show gray at the temples. He had joined the military when he was young, but he had never expected to spend his career watching empty space. Still, the work was important. Someone had to monitor the borders of human space even if nothing ever happened out here. He had a crew of 30 people, all dedicated to their work, all knowing that their job was simple but vital. They were the eyes and ears of humanity, watching for danger that might come from beyond the familiar worlds humans had claimed. The screens showed all the normal readings. Radiation from the distant sun, cosmic dust, the gentle hum of background radiation that filled the universe. Everything was peaceful. Everything was as it should be. Marcus was about to sit down in his command chair when one of his officers, a young woman named Catherine Morris, suddenly straightened up at her station. "Sir, I'm getting something," Catherine said, her voice calm but alert. "Long-range sensors picking up an object entering human space." "It's moving fast." Marcus walked over to her station immediately. On the screen, a small dot appeared, moving through space with purpose. It was not a human vessel. Human ships had a particular signature, a particular way they moved. This was something different. This was something new. "What are the coordinates?" Marcus asked. "It's heading toward the Titan colony, sir." "ETA approximately 4 hours," Catherine replied, her fingers moving across the console as she tried to get more information about the mysterious object. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. The Titan colony was one of humanity's largest settlements beyond Mars. More than 10,000 people lived there, working in laboratories, mining operations, and agricultural domes. If this unknown object was a threat, it could endanger all of them. "All hands to alert status," Marcus commanded. His voice was calm, but his mind was racing. "Catherine, keep tracking that object. I want to know everything about it." The ship came alive with activity. Crew members moved to their stations, running checks on weapon systems, shields, and communication equipment. Marcus had trained them well. In 5 years of watching empty space, he had drilled his crew over and over, making sure they would be ready if something ever happened. Now something was happening. For the next 3 hours, Marcus and his crew watched the object approach. As it grew closer, the sensors began to pick up more details. It was a small ship, no more than 30 meters long. It had an unusual design, with angles and curves that looked nothing like human engineering. The hull was dark and metallic, covered with antennae and what looked like scanning equipment. Catherine brought the data to Marcus. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures from that object. It's scanning. It's scanning our colonies, our stations, everything. Open hailing frequencies on all channels," Marcus said. "Try to make contact." Catherine's fingers moved across her console. "Frequencies open, sir. This is Captain Marcus Hayes of the human patrol vessel Guardian. You are in human-controlled space. Identify yourself and state your purpose immediately." For a long moment there was nothing but static. Then a voice crackled through the speakers. It was strange, with clicking sounds underneath the translated words, as if the translation system was struggling to convert the alien sounds into human speech. "Human vessel, this is Probe 7 of the Verath Empire. You are speaking to the most advanced civilization in this sector of space. Your presence here is tolerated, but only barely. We are conducting a scientific survey of this region." Marcus felt his jaw clench. The tone was completely wrong. It was not the tone of someone asking for permission or offering trade. It was the tone of someone who believed they were superior, someone who looked down on everyone else. "You are in human space," Marcus said firmly. "You need to state your intentions and provide proper documentation for your presence here." "Humans," the voice came back, and now there was something that sounded like laughter in it. "You are a young species, primitive in your ways. We do not need your permission to do anything. We go where we wish, when we wish. Your space, as you call it, will soon belong to us. Consider this probe a warning. The Verath Empire does not take orders from lesser beings. The communication cut off suddenly. On the screen, the probe began moving even faster, its scanning equipment intensifying. Catherine's voice was shaking as she reported her findings. "Sir, it's scanning everything. Our colonies, our military installations, the genetic markers of the population. It's taking comprehensive data of everything." Marcus watched helplessly as the probe swept through human space like a predator examining its prey. There was nothing he could do. His patrol vessel was designed for observation and minor defense, not for engaging alien ships in combat. The probe was moving away now, heading back out toward the edge of human space, carrying with it detailed information about everything humans had built. Marcus made a decision. He opened a direct communication channel to Earth. "This is Captain Marcus Hayes aboard the Guardian. I need to speak with Commander Patterson immediately. This is Priority 1 emergency." The response came quickly. Commander Laura Patterson's face appeared on the screen. She was a serious woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen many things. She listened without interrupting as Marcus told her everything that had happened. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. "They scanned our colonies?" she asked. "Everything, Commander. They took genetic data, military data, information on all our settlements and stations." Patterson nodded slowly, and Marcus saw something change in her expression. It was like watching a decision being made in real time. Her jaw tightened and her eyes became harder, more focused. "Thank you for the report, Captain. Return to standard patrol routes. I will handle this matter." The communication ended. Marcus sat back in his command chair, feeling the weight of what had just happened. Humanity had faced many challenges since beginning to explore space. They had dealt with harsh environments, technical failures, and the loneliness of the vast universe. But they had never faced this. They had never been threatened by another intelligent species. He did not know it yet, but what happened in the next few months would change everything. The violation of human space had set something in motion, something that could not be stopped, and humanity would have to learn that sometimes the price of peace is being ready to fight for it. Commander Laura Patterson sat in the war room beneath the surface of Earth, surrounded by screens and maps showing every human settlement across the solar system. She had called together the leaders of every nation on Earth, representatives from Mars, the lunar colonies, and the asteroid mining operations. There were 43 people in the room, all of them watching her, waiting for her to speak. The video of the alien probe's broadcast played on the central screen. The cold, arrogant voice of the Verith commander filled the room again. "Humans, you are a young species, primitive in your ways. We do not need your permission to do anything. We go where we wish when we wish. Your space, as you call it, will soon belong to us." When the video ended, Patterson stood up. She was a woman who had spent 40 years in military service. She had faced wars, politics, and difficult decisions. But she had never seen humanity so united in anger. Every person in that room felt the same thing. They felt violated, they felt disrespected, and they felt something else. Something that had been dormant in the human spirit for generations. They felt the need to defend what was theirs. "We are going to prepare," Patterson said simply. "We are going to prepare in ways that these aliens have never imagined. We will not attack immediately. We will not show our hand. We will let them believe we are afraid. We will let them believe we are weak. And then, when the moment comes, we will show them what happens when they disrespect humanity." The room erupted in agreement. For the first time in human history, there were no debates, no arguments between nations. There was only one objective, and every person in that room understood it. Humanity would defend itself. Patterson appointed Dr. Kevin Brooks to lead a new division called Psychological Operations. Kevin was a brilliant strategist, a man who understood how information moved through societies and how to use that information as a weapon. His first task was to design a message that would reach across the galaxy, a message that would tell every species in the universe that humanity was not to be trifled with. "We will not threaten," Patterson told Kevin. "We will not beg. We will simply state the truth. We will show them what we are capable of, and we will let that speak for itself." Meanwhile, engineers and scientists across human space began their work. Military installations that had been quiet for decades suddenly became hives of activity. The old asteroid mining base near Mars was transformed into a manufacturing facility for weapons and armor. The shipyards that had built peaceful exploration vessels began constructing something new, something designed for war. Dr. Marcus Chen led the military engineering division. He was a small man with thick glasses and brilliant mind for weapons design. He had spent years studying theoretical combat systems, never thinking he would actually need to build them. Now he had unlimited resources and a clear mission. He worked with his team to design a new class of warship. It had to be fast, maneuverable, and lethal. It had to be able to stand against multiple alien vessels and win. The ship was called the Vanguard. It was 300 meters long, sleek and dangerous looking. Its hull was reinforced with materials that human scientists had developed over decades of space exploration. Its weapon systems were state-of-the-art, combining kinetic weapons with energy weapons and missile systems. Every system on the ship was designed for one purpose: to destroy enemies. Captain Marcus Hayes was given command of the Vanguard. He was brought to Earth to oversee the final stages of construction and to begin training his crew. When he first saw the ship, he understood immediately what it meant. This was not a patrol vessel. This was not an exploration ship. This was a weapon of war. Hayes was joined by Lieutenant Sophie Turner, a brilliant tactical officer who had graduated top of her class from the military academy. Sophie was a woman in her late 20s with sharp eyes and a sharp mind. She had spent years studying alien combat tactics, ancient human military history, and theoretical battle scenarios. Now she had the chance to apply all of that knowledge in the real world. Sophie took one look at the Vanguard and smiled. It was a predator's smile, the smile of someone who understood exactly what this ship could do. She immediately began developing battle strategies, running simulations on every possible scenario she could imagine. She drafted 100 different combat plans, then narrowed them down to the 12 most likely to succeed. The crew of the Vanguard was selected carefully. Every person on that ship was trained, disciplined, and dedicated to their mission. They were not murderers or monsters. They were soldiers, people who had chosen to defend their home. As they trained day after day, drilling combat scenarios and weapons practice, they understood the weight of what they were about to do. Throughout human space, other preparations were made. Every colony received additional weapons and supplies. Shelters were reinforced. Communication systems were upgraded and hardened against alien interference. Defense networks were established around every human settlement. If the aliens came, humanity would be ready. Dr. Kevin Brooks worked in a secure facility, recording the message that would be broadcast across the galaxy. He chose his words carefully, speaking in simple language that the translation systems could carry across different species. The message spoke of violation, of disrespect, and of the cost of underestimating humanity. It spoke of peace and cooperation, but also of the price of aggression. Patterson watched the message being recorded. When it was finished, she ordered it placed in encrypted vaults across 3 different worlds. The message would only be broadcast when the time was right, when humanity had made its stand and shown the galaxy what they were capable of. Months passed. The Vanguard was completed and launched. It took its position near Saturn, cloaked and invisible, waiting. Around it, 17 support vessels also took their positions, each one prepared and ready. All across human space, weapons were charged, shields were tested, and soldiers stood ready. The galaxy did not yet know it, but humanity had changed. For generations, humans had been the young species, the peaceful explorers, the ones who sought trade and friendship. That was no longer true. Humanity was still peaceful, still seeking cooperation. But now humanity was also something else. Now humanity was a species that would not accept disrespect. Now humanity was ready to show the galaxy that arrogance had a price. Patterson stood in the command center, looking at the displays showing all of human space. Everything was in place. Every weapon was ready. Every soldier was trained. The trap was set and they were waiting for the prey to walk into it. She thought of the alien probe and its arrogant commander. She thought of the disrespect that had been shown to humanity, and she smiled. The aliens had made a mistake. They had shown their hand, revealed their contempt, and now they would learn what happened when you underestimated a species that had survived through cooperation, innovation, and the determination to protect what belonged to them. The age of human humility was ending. The age of human defense was beginning, and no one in the galaxy was ready for what was about to happen. 6 months had passed since the Verath probe violated human space. For 6 months, nothing happened. The aliens did not return. They did not send messages. They did not make any contact at all. To anyone watching from the outside, It might have seemed that humanity had been intimidated into silence. It might have seemed that the aliens had won without firing a single shot. But this was exactly what Commander Patterson wanted them to think. Across human space, the military preparations continued in secret. The Vanguard orbited silently near Saturn, invisible and waiting. The crews trained constantly, running combat scenarios until they could execute them in their sleep. Every weapon system was tested. Every communication protocol was verified. Everything was ready, but nobody outside of the military leadership knew about it. The Titan colony was the largest human settlement beyond Mars. More than 10,000 people lived in the massive domes that covered the frozen surface of Saturn's moon. They lived and worked in laboratories that studied the secrets of space, in farms that grew food in artificial soil, in manufacturing plants that created equipment for other colonies. To the people living there, life was normal. They did not know that their colony had been chosen as bait in a trap set for an entire alien alliance. Dr. James Mitchell was the commander of the Titan colony. He was a scientist first and an administrator second. He had spent 20 years studying the geology and atmosphere of Saturn's moon, and he loved his work. When Commander Patterson contacted him with new orders, he was confused. She told him that the colony's defenses would be temporarily reduced. She told him that human military ships would be withdrawn. She told him to act as if Titan was vulnerable and unprepared. "Why would we do this?" Mitchell asked over the secure communication channel. "Because we need them to believe they can attack us," Patterson replied simply. "We need them to think we are weak. We need them to come." Mitchell understood then. He understood what Patterson was really saying. The colony was not just bait. The people living there were part of a larger strategy. Mitchell thought of the 10,000 people under his command, the families and children and scientists who trusted him to keep them safe. It was a heavy responsibility, but he understood the necessity of it. The weapon systems at Titan were powered down. The defense grid that had been installed months earlier was put into standby mode. To any observer, the colony would look like an easy target. It would look like a human settlement that could be conquered with minimal resistance. 3 months after the Vareth probe had invaded human space, another probe appeared. This time it was a Tolkar probe, sleek and efficient. It approached the outer edges of human space and immediately began scanning, just as the Vareth probe had done. But this time humans were ready. They had spread false data throughout their communication systems, data designed to be discovered. They had placed fake military reports in locations where an intruding probe would find them. They had made it look like humanity's military was in chaos, divided and unprepared. The Tolkar probe found all of this false information and transmitted it back to the Tolkar homeworld. It also scanned Titan and found it defenseless, a colony of 10,000 people with minimal weapons and no support from other human forces. The news spread through the alien alliance like fire. The Vareth, the Tolkar, and the Kessian collective had been discussing the possibility of invading human space. They had been debating whether humans were a real threat or just a minor inconvenience. Now, with the data from the Tolkar probe, they had their answer. Humans were not a threat. They were prey. In the secure command chambers of the Tolkar Dominion, a commander named Vexthar made a proposal to the Alliance. He stood before the assembled leaders of 3 alien species and smiled with confidence. "The data is clear," Vexthar announced. "The humans are disorganized. Their military forces are scattered and weak. Their largest colony beyond Mars is defended by barely 100 soldiers. I propose that we gather our forces and move against human space immediately. We will crush their military, seize their colonies, and divide their territories among our 3 species. Within months, there will be no human presence in this sector of space." The other alien leaders agreed. It was a perfect opportunity. They would not wait for humans to become stronger. They would not give humanity time to prepare. They would strike now when the humans were vulnerable. 23 ships of the alien coalition began moving toward human space. 16 of them were warships, each one equipped with weapons and armor. The others were transport ships that would carry troops and equipment. They moved through the darkness of space with confidence, knowing that they were moving to an easy victory. But they did not know what was waiting for them. Captain Marcus Hayes stood in the command center of the Vanguard, watching the alien fleet approach on his screens. Sophie Turner sat beside him, her eyes studying the data that was coming in from the long-range sensors. Around them, the rest of the crew was quiet and focused. each person at their station ready to move at a moment's notice. They took the bait, Sophie said quietly. All of it. Hayes replied. They are moving exactly as we predicted. Formation is loose, like they are not expecting any real resistance. Confidence makes them sloppy. The alien fleet crossed the boundary of human space without hesitation. They did not expect anything to be waiting for them. They did not expect that every human system, every human probe, every human sensor had been tracking them since they left their homeworlds. They did not expect that humanity had studied their tactics, analyzed their weapon systems, and planned for this exact moment. Commander Patterson, sitting in the war room beneath Earth's surface, gave the order to activate the trap. Immediately, military communications came alive across human space. Ships that had been hidden powered up their engines. Defense stations that had been offline came to life. Around Titan and at every strategic point throughout human space, humanity revealed that it had been waiting all along. The alien fleet suddenly realized that they were not advancing into unprepared space. They were advancing into a carefully constructed trap. They were flying directly toward the most lethal force that humanity could bring to bear. But they were already committed. They could not turn back now. They could only move forward and hope to fight their way through whatever was coming. Captain Hayes watched the alien fleet continue moving deeper into human space. They were still confident, still believing that they could win despite the unexpected resistance. It was a confidence born from centuries of victories against weaker species. It was a confidence that was about to be shattered. All hands to battle stations, Hayes commanded. His voice was calm and steady. Charge all weapons. In 30 minutes, we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens humanity. Throughout the Vanguard, crew members moved to their positions. They were ready. They had trained for this moment for months. Now it was time to execute. Now it was time to defend their home. Now it was time to show the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be conquered, but a species to be respected. The alien fleet moved deeper into the trap, unaware that their journey toward easy victory was actually a journey toward a meeting with the end of their arrogance. The alien fleet moved through human space like hunters moving through a forest, confident and unafraid. They had traveled millions of kilometers to reach this point, and now they were close enough to see their target. The Titan colony appeared, on their screens as a small defenseless settlement waiting to be conquered. The commanders of the alien warships were already dividing the territories in their minds, already planning which species would get which human colonies. Then everything changed. Captain Marcus Hayes gave one word: fire. The Vanguard decloaked, revealing itself suddenly in the darkness of space. As soon as the cloaking field dropped away, every weapon system on the ship activated. Missiles launched in waves. Energy weapons fired with a sound like thunder across the void. The lead alien destroyer, a massive ship called the Vexthar's Fang, never had time to raise its shields. The human weapons tore through its hull with unstoppable force. In seconds, it was nothing but expanding debris floating in the darkness. Sophie Turner sat at the tactical station, her hands moving across her console with practiced precision. She directed the fire of not just the Vanguard, but of 17 support vessels that had also decloaked around the alien fleet. She coordinated the attacks with the precision of a musician conducting an orchestra. Every weapon fired at the moment it could do the most damage. Every shot was calculated to destroy or disable an enemy vessel. The alien fleet tried to respond, but they were in chaos. They had not expected resistance. They had not prepared for combat. Half of their ships were transport vessels with minimal weapons. The other warships were scattered across a wide formation, not ready to defend each other. They tried to organize a counterattack, but they were too slow. Humans had spent 6 months training for this moment. The aliens had spent the journey here assuming they had already won. A Tolkar cruiser managed to power up its weapons and fired at the Vanguard. The energy beam struck the human ship's shields, and alarms sounded throughout the vessel. But the shields held. Captain Hayes had designed the Vanguard to take punishment and survive. The human ship fired back immediately, and the Tolkar cruiser exploded in a fireball of metal and energy. Around them, the battle raged. Missiles streaked through space like deadly birds. Ships turned and fired, trying desperately to defend themselves, against an enemy that seemed to know their every move. The human defenders had studied the aliens' weapon systems, their tactics, their weaknesses. They knew exactly where to strike to cause the most damage. One of the alien warships managed to break through the human formation and headed directly toward the vanguard. It was a Kessian destroyer, a ship with angular armor and powerful weapons. Its commander had decided to take the fight directly to the flagship of the human fleet. The two ships raced toward each other, weapons blazing. But before the Kessian destroyer could reach the vanguard, 3 human corvettes moved to intercept. They opened fire with coordinated precision, hitting the destroyer's engines and weapon systems. The Kessian ship slowed and began to lose power. It tried to fight back, but it was too badly damaged. The vanguard finished the job with a single missile strike that tore the alien ship apart. The battle was becoming one-sided. The aliens had expected an easy victory, and instead they were being methodically destroyed. Some of their commanders tried to order a retreat, but there was nowhere to retreat to. The human fleet had positioned itself to trap them, to prevent escape. Every direction they tried to move, there was another human ship waiting. Vexithar, the Tolkar commander who had proposed this invasion, was watching from his flagship as his fleet fell apart around him. He saw ships exploding, saw his allies dying, saw the terrible reality of what he had ordered. The humans were not primitive. The humans were not weak. The humans were prepared, organized, and deadly. He tried to contact the Varith and Kessian commanders to organize a unified defense, but communication was breaking down. The humans had hacked into the alien communication systems and were creating interference, making coordination almost impossible. The alien fleet was fragmenting into individual ships, each one fighting for survival. Lieutenant Sophie Turner watched all of this unfold on her screens. She was issuing commands, directing fire, making tactical decisions that would determine the outcome of the battle. She thought of all those simulations she had run, all those scenarios she had considered. This battle was playing out almost exactly as she had predicted. The humans were winning because they had prepared better, fought smarter, and understood their enemy better. 30 minutes into the battle, 3 alien ships managed to break through the human formation. They powered up their engines to maximum and tried to escape back toward the edge of human space. They were headed for the wormhole gateway that would allow them to travel quickly back to their homeworlds. If they escaped, they would carry news of this disaster back to the alien alliance. They would warn their people that humans were not to be trifled with. Captain Hayes saw them trying to escape. He made a decision. He ordered the vanguard to pursue them, leaving the main battle to his support vessels. The 3 alien ships and the human flagship raced through space at incredible speeds. The vanguard was faster and more maneuverable. Slowly, methodically, Hayes closed the distance. The lead alien ship tried to fight back, turning to face the vanguard and opening fire. But the human ship was already expecting the maneuver. The vanguard moved to the side, its weapons firing continuously. One of the pursuing missiles hit the alien ship's engines. It began to slow, smoke and debris streaming from its hull. Other 2 alien ships slowed down to help their companion, and that was their mistake. The vanguard caught them. More missiles, more energy weapons. One ship exploded in a massive explosion. The 3rd ship managed to raise its shields just in time to survive a direct missile strike, but it was crippled. Its engines were failing. Its weapons were offline. It was helpless. Captain Hayes transmitted a message to the crippled alien ship. "This is the human vessel Vanguard. You have violated human space. You have shown disrespect to humanity. Surrender now or be destroyed." There was a moment of silence. Then the alien ship powered down its remaining systems. The commander had made the only choice left to him: surrender or death. The choice was easy. Back at the main battle, the remaining alien ships were still trying to fight. But they knew the battle was lost. One by one, they were being destroyed or crippled. Some tried to surrender. Others fought to the end. The humans accepted the surrenders and destroyed the ships that continued to fight. 43 minutes after the first shot was fired, the battle was over. 16 alien warships had been destroyed. 7 more had been disabled and captured. The transport ships had been allowed to escape, their crews choosing to flee rather than fight. In total, the alien coalition had lost 3/4 of its combat force in less than an hour. The human casualties were minimal. One support vessel had been damaged but remained operational. No human ships had been destroyed. No human lives had been lost. Captain Hayes stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, looking out at the wreckage of the alien fleet. Around him floated the remains of proud warships and their crews. It was a terrible sight, but it was necessary. The aliens had forced this battle. They had chosen to attack. They had shown no mercy in their contempt for humanity. Now, they would learn what happened when they underestimated a species that was willing to defend what was theirs. Commander Patterson received the news in the war room beneath Earth. When she heard the results of the battle, she smiled. The plan had worked perfectly. The trap had worked. Humanity had not just survived. Humanity had won. Now came the final step. Now came the message to the galaxy. 3 ships limped back toward the edge of human space. They were the survivors of the alien coalition fleet, the ones who had managed to escape the trap. The hulls of the vessels were scarred with weapon marks. Their engines were damaged and barely functional. The crews inside were broken and traumatized, having witnessed the destruction of their entire fighting force in less than an hour. Commander Vexithar sat in what remained of his flagship's command center. Around him, screens flickered with damaged data and broken communication systems. He tried to understand what had happened. His fleet had been confident, organized, and prepared for easy victory. The humans had been supposed to be primitive and helpless. Instead, the humans had been waiting. The humans had been ready. The humans had been absolutely lethal. Vexthar ordered his communication specialist to gather video footage and weapon data from the battle. Every piece of information they had collected would be important. It would be proof of what happened. It would be evidence that the humans were not a species to be conquered. It would be evidence of a terrible mistake. The 3 ships jumped through the wormhole gateway and began the long journey back to their homeworlds. They carried with them the knowledge of their defeat. They carried with them the knowledge that in the vast galaxy, there was a species that had the intelligence, the technology, and the will to defend itself against an alliance of 3 civilizations. On Earth, in the war room beneath the surface, Commander Patterson watched the 3 ships escape. She had allowed them to go deliberately. She had wanted survivors to escape. She had wanted the news to spread. She had wanted the galaxy to know that humans could not be conquered. Dr. Kevin Brooks was in the communication center when Patterson arrived. He was holding a data chip that contained the message they had recorded months ago. The message was waiting to be broadcast to every known frequency in the galaxy. It would be carried by every communication network, every Ansible, every quantum transmitter. It would be impossible to ignore. Every species in the galaxy would hear it. Are we ready? Patterson asked. Yes, Commander, Kevin replied. The moment you give the order, this message will begin broadcasting. It will reach every intelligent species within 1,000 light-years within the next several days. There is no way to stop it. There is no way to contain it. Patterson thought of the alien probe, the arrogant voice of the Varith commander mocking humanity. She thought of the violation of human space. She thought of the thousands of humans who had worked to prepare for this moment. She thought of the soldiers and crew members who had fought and won. She thought of the price that had been paid to reach this point. Broadcast it, she said. Kevin pressed a button, and across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds orbiting distant stars, humans began speaking. The message was simple and direct. It did not threaten. It did not beg. It simply stated the truth. We are humanity. We have shown mercy for generations. We offered trade. We offered friendship. You chose arrogance. You chose violation. You chose conquest. Today you have learned what it means to enter human space with hostile intent. Let this moment define the new order. No species dares enter human space with malice. The price of arrogance is death. We are not your victims. We are your equal. And we will defend what is ours. The message played for hours on every frequency. Attached to the message was video of the battle, showing the destruction of the alien fleet. There was no propaganda, no distortion of the facts. The video simply showed what humans could do when they decided to defend themselves. The video showed that humans were not primitive. The video showed that humans were not weak. The galaxy received the message and fell into stunned silence. On the Varath homeworld, the government watched the broadcast in shock. They had believed their own propaganda about human weakness. They had believed the reports from their scientists that humans were a minor species not worthy of concern. Now they had to face the reality that their fleet had been destroyed, that their arrogance had cost them thousands of lives, and that the humans were far more powerful than anyone had imagined. On the Tolkar Dominion, military leaders gathered in emergency sessions. They analyzed the video of the battle over and over, looking for any indication of how it could have happened. They looked for signs of deception or trickery. They found none. The humans had simply outfought them, outthought them, and outplanned them. The Tolkar understood immediately that invading human space would be suicidal. The Tolkar understood that an alliance with humans would be far more valuable than an attempt at conquest. On the Kessian homeworld, the insectoid collective processed the information differently. As a hive mind, they understood strategy in ways that individual species could not always comprehend. They immediately recognized that humanity possessed something rare and valuable. Humanity possessed unity of purpose combined with individual creative thinking. Humanity possessed the ability to cooperate on a massive scale while maintaining adaptability. The Kessian understood that such a species would be a dangerous enemy and a valuable ally. Within days of the message being broadcast, communication requests began arriving at Earth from every major species in the galaxy. The Varath wanted to discuss peace terms. The Tolkar wanted to discuss trade agreements. The Kessian wanted to discuss scientific cooperation. Species that had not been part of the attempted invasion also wanted to establish contact with humanity. Commander Patterson oversaw the establishment of new diplomatic channels. She appointed ambassadors to represent humanity across the galaxy. She worked with the leaders of Earth and the human colonies to establish policies for how humanity would interact with alien civilizations. The consensus was clear. Humanity would remain open to trade and cooperation, but humanity would never again accept disrespect. Humanity would never again tolerate violation of their territories. Humanity would defend themselves with absolute determination if ever attacked again. Captain Marcus Hayes returned to Earth after the battle. He was promoted to admiral and given command of the entire human fleet. But before he took on his new responsibilities, he returned to the observation deck of the Vanguard and stood alone, looking out at the stars. Lieutenant Sophie Turner joined him there. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. They had participated in something historic. They had participated in the moment when humanity changed from a young, peaceful species into a civilization that had proven itself worthy of respect. "What happens now?" Sophie asked. "We prepare," Hayes replied. "We continue to improve our defenses. We continue to strengthen our ties with alien civilizations. And we make sure that no one ever forgets what happens when they disrespect humanity." Dr. Kevin Brooks continued his work in psychological operations, but now it was different. Now he was not preparing propaganda for war. Now he was helping to shape how the galaxy perceived humanity. He worked with news organizations on dozens of worlds to tell the story of humanity's struggle and triumph. He helped ensure that the galaxy understood that humans were not conquerors but defenders. Humans were not monsters, but a species that valued cooperation and would fight only when forced to do so. Months after the battle, the 3 surviving alien ships finally reached their home worlds. Their crews told their stories. Videos and data from the battle were analyzed by military experts across the galaxy. The consensus was universal. The humans had won not through luck or trickery, but through superior preparation, superior training, and superior strategy. The humans had learned that peace was valuable, but never at the cost of their own survival and dignity. Years passed. Human space became a region of the galaxy known not for its wealth or its size, but for its strength and its unity. Humans traded with other species. Humans formed alliances. Humans worked together with aliens on scientific projects and exploration missions. But all of this cooperation was built on a foundation of mutual respect. The respect had been purchased with the blood of those who had prepared for the battle, with the sacrifice of those who had chosen to defend their home. Captain Marcus Hayes stood on the observation deck of a new space station orbiting Earth. Below him, the planet turned slowly, blue and green and beautiful. Behind him, the Vanguard floated in dock, its weapon systems inactive but ready. Somewhere in the void of space, human ships patrolled the borders of human territories, watching for any sign of trouble. Somewhere in laboratories across the solar system, scientists worked on new technologies and new ways to protect humanity's future. The age of human humility had ended. The age of human dignity had begun, and the galaxy would never again underestimate the species that had chosen to defend what was theirs. The price of arrogance the humans had shown was measured not in gold or territory, but in the strength and determination of a civilization that refused to accept anything less than respect. The stars had witnessed many civilizations rise and fall, but few had risen as humanity had risen, from peaceful explorers to protectors of their own destiny, from a young species seeking acceptance to a mature civilization, demanding the respect it had earned. The humans had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and in doing so, they had earned their place among the great powers of the universe. 5 years had passed since the battle that changed everything. The galaxy had settled into a new normal, a new understanding of where humanity stood among the stars. But the changes that had occurred were far deeper than simple military respect. The entire way that other species viewed humanity had transformed. On Mars, the colony had grown to include representatives from 7 different alien species. They worked alongside humans in research stations and mining operations. The Varath had sent cultural attachés to learn from humans. The Tolkar had established trade hubs on every major human settlement. The Kessian had opened scientific research partnerships that were producing breakthroughs in medicine and physics. But none of this cooperation would have happened without the battle. None of this would have happened without humanity's willingness to stand up and defend itself. Admiral Marcus Hayes walked through the corridors of the new space station that orbited above Mars. The station was called Unity Station, and it was a symbol of the new era of cooperation that had begun. Humans, Varath, Tolkar, and Kessian all worked together in the various departments and laboratories. It was remarkable to see, but for Hayes it was bittersweet. He remembered the violence of the battle. He remembered the destruction. He knew that this peace had been purchased with blood and fire. Hayes made his way to the observation deck, a place he visited often when he needed to think. The deck overlooked the vast expanse of space with Earth visible in the distance, a blue jewel floating in the darkness. A figure was already there looking out at the stars. It was Sophie Turner, now a full commander in the human fleet. She had become one of the most respected military officers in human space, known for her strategic brilliance and her ability to think ahead of her opponents. "Admiral," Sophie said, not turning from the window, "I was wondering when you would come up here." "Old habits," Hayes replied, standing beside her. "How are the new recruits progressing?" "Well, we have applicants from 3 different species now who want to join the Human Military Academy. They want to learn from us, from the people who defeated an alliance of 3 civilizations." Sophie paused. Funny how things change. A few years ago, aliens didn't even know humans existed as a significant military power. Now they want to learn from us. "That worries me," Hayes said quietly. "I did not want this. I did not want humanity to be seen as a military power that others should fear. I wanted something different." Sophie finally turned to look at him. "What did you want, Admiral?" "I wanted humanity to be seen as something more than warriors. I wanted us to be seen as people who valued peace, who valued cooperation, who valued the creation of something better." Hayes looked back at the stars. "But sometimes, to protect what you value, you have to be willing to fight. And when you fight, people remember the fighting more than they remember why you were fighting." Down on Earth, Dr. Kevin Brooks was working in a different kind of facility now. Instead of designing psychological operations for war, he was designing programs to help humans and aliens understand each other better. He had created a series of educational programs that taught alien species about human history, human culture, and human values. The programs were broadcasted across the galaxy, and millions of aliens watched them. Kevin sat in his office reviewing viewer feedback from the latest program about human philosophy and ethics. The comments were remarkably positive. Aliens seemed fascinated by the human concept of individual rights combined with collective responsibility. They were intrigued by humanity's long history of struggling with questions of justice and fairness. One message stood out. It was from a Varath philosopher named Kexthar. He wrote, "Your species shows something that we have never seen before. You have power, and yet you question whether you should use it. You have strength, and yet you worry about the suffering it causes. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. Kevin read the message several times. It captured something important about humanity, something that the battle had brought to light. Humanity was not defined by its military strength. Humanity was defined by its capacity to think, to question, to care about the consequences of its actions. In a military academy on the moon, new human soldiers were being trained. But they were not being trained the way soldiers had been trained before the battle. Commander Laura Patterson had completely redesigned military education for human forces. Now soldiers learned not just tactics and weapons, but ethics and philosophy. They learned about the consequences of violence. They learned about the importance of peace. They learned that being a soldier meant being ready to fight, but also being mature enough to know when fighting was truly necessary. Patterson stood in front of a class of new recruits, both human and alien. The aliens were there as observers, learning how humans approached military training. She spoke to them about responsibility, about the burden of power, about the weight of decisions that could cost lives. A soldier is not defined by how many enemies they can kill, Patterson said. A soldier is defined by their willingness to stand in the darkness and protect those who cannot protect themselves. A soldier is defined by their courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult. And most importantly, a soldier is defined by their commitment to peace. One of the alien observers, a young Tolkar named Vexthal, raised his hand. Patterson acknowledged him. "Commander, how can we be soldiers and seek peace at the same time?" Vexthal asked. "Because peace is what we are defending," Patterson replied. "Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice. And sometimes you have to defend justice against those who would destroy it." Years passed. The human colonies continued to grow and prosper. Trade between human space and the territories of other species increased dramatically. Technology was shared. Scientific discoveries were celebrated across multiple civilizations. But underneath all of this progress, there was a quiet understanding. There was an understanding that humanity would not be taken advantage of. There was an understanding that humanity would not accept disrespect. There was an understanding that humanity had proven itself and would never again need to prove itself. New generations of humans grew up knowing the story of the battle. It became part of human culture, part of human identity. Children learned about how their ancestors had stood together against overwhelming odds. They learned about Captain Marcus Hayes and his brilliant strategy. They learned about Lieutenant Sophie Turner and her tactical genius. They learned about Commander Laura Patterson and her vision for a unified humanity. They learned about Dr. Kevin Brooks and his work in spreading human values across the galaxy. But they also learned something else. They learned that the battle was not about conquest or domination. They learned that the battle was about respect. They learned that standing up for yourself was not evil. They learned that protecting what you valued was not wrong. They learned that strength and compassion could exist together in the same civilization. Admiral Hayes was promoted again, given the title of High Commander of all human military forces. It was the highest position in the human military. But when Hayes accepted the position, he made a speech that surprised everyone who heard it. "I accept this responsibility," he said, "not because I love war or because I love power. I accept this responsibility because I love peace. I accept this responsibility because I believe that humans have something special to offer the galaxy. We have the capacity to think. We have the capacity to feel. We have the capacity to create. And we have the capacity to defend those things when they are threatened. But we also have the capacity to show mercy, to show compassion, and to show that victory does not require destroying your enemies, only preventing them from harming you." On the observation deck of what was now called the Memorial Station, built at the location where the great battle had taken place, visitors from across the galaxy came to remember what had happened. They came to understand humanity. They came to see the place where a young species had proven itself worthy of respect. A monument had been built there, a simple structure with a plaque that read, "Here, humanity stood." Here humanity defended its home. Here humanity showed the galaxy that strength and wisdom could exist together. Let all who visit remember this moment. Let all who visit understand that the greatest victories are not won through conquest but through courage. Let all who visit know that humanity will always stand here, ready to defend not just itself, but the principle that peace is worth protecting. Young humans and young aliens walked together through the memorial, learning about history. understanding their place in a galaxy that was far larger and more complex than they had ever imagined. They understood that they were living in a time of unprecedented cooperation and peace. They understood that this peace had been hard won. And they understood that it was their responsibility to protect it and preserve it for generations to come. Admiral Hayes, now in his final years of service, looked at these young people walking through the memorial. He saw hope in their faces. He saw the future of humanity and its place among the stars. He saw a species that had learned the most important lesson of all, the lesson that true strength is not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when to defend and when to build. The age of human arrogance had never,